Hey everybody, welcome to Irish Sports Daily Hit and Hustle on ISD TV on YouTube. Here with Greg, Jamie and Greg again here today. We're talking about the Fiesta Bowl and Oklahoma State's defense. Definitely one of the best defenses Notre Dame has faced this season. One of the best defenses in the country. Top 5 unit all around. Best defense they played in Cincinnati. Wisconsin was the only defense they faced that was ranked higher in F plus. It's Oklahoma State's ranked third in F plus. Wisconsin was second, and that Wisconsin game, I think people look back on it and they see the number. They scored 41 points, but they didn't really score 41 points. Like, it was defense and special teams. The offense really struggled for most of the game, which is why Drew Pine got so much love in that game, because he came in and gave the offense a spark, right? They only managed 3 yards rushing, not per carry, 3 total, and 3.51 yards per play. Just first off, Greg, just when you watch this team, how would you compare it to the best defenses Notre Dame has played? Maybe just style wise and just total quality.
Yeah. First of all, Merry Christmas. This is our
Merry
Christmas episode. This is the last one before the Christmas is gonna happen. So so I regret to inform everyone that this defense is good. And like, I think that for me, when I was watching them, they're just like really fun to watch. Like, I liked watching their tape. I liked watching their the way that they play, their style of play. The way that they compare, I liked their secondary more than, I guess, Wisconsin, less than Cincinnati, just because Cincinnati has the 2 corners that are just like of a different caliber than Notre Dame saw or will see against Oklahoma State. They have a pretty dynamic set of linebackers when it comes to getting pressure on the quarterback. I'm just gonna look up the names here because I had them down. So Malcolm Rodriguez obviously is kind of their star, and he gets after the quarterback a good bit. They send Devin Harper, number 16. He has 15 quarterback hurries on the season, which is a lot for a linebacker. That just kind of shows like how much they use him in the pass game. They don't really have like that one star, right? So, Cincinnati has like the known like Sauce Gardner, right? Or Kobe Bryant, or like those guys, or Mekhi Sanders, where it's like, okay, like those are their stars, and then the rest are like kind of complimentary. Wisconsin had the linebacker Chanel, and then they had the Sanborn, who's like, those are name players that everyone knows about. Like these, like Oklahoma State doesn't really have that. But what they do is they all have their role. They all play their role really well. They're very aggressive. They come hit all parts of the defense, right? The corners will come up and hit you. The safeties will come up and hit you. The linebackers, obviously. So it's definitely a matchup that will test Notre Dame as far as where they have made the improvements since, the bye week. That's been like kind of a big, talking point with, Notre Dame's offenses. Like, everything's different now, right? Like it's almost like the struggles early in the season with Wisconsin and Cincinnati. It's like, well, we didn't have our lines sorted and we weren't really playing the way we wanted with Jack Cohn, and now we are. Well, this team is going to test that, and they're going to test it without Kyron, which is, we have not seen Notre Dame play a football game without Kyron Williams the last 2 seasons, and we really don't know what that's going to look like. So it's going to be interesting to say the least.
Yeah, and I think I would totally agree with what you said about the secondary, compared them to not on the Cincinnati level, but definitely better than Wisconsin, and really just good at all 3 levels. Like, yeah. I wouldn't say they don't have like you said, they don't have a game record on the defense. Like, not a guy that, you just say, man, we got to double team this guy on every snap, right? They don't have that guy. They don't have a corner who's going to take away one side of the field like a Sauce Gardner would, right? But what they do have is just a great scheme. And they just are good at all three levels and fast, like extremely fast. Like all their guys, like, they aren't the biggest at everything. And I think it's fitting of a Big 12 defense where, they have some edge guys that are like 230, but they're fast. They're really fast. And they have, Rodriguez is like 225, 230, and he can really run, right? Like Harper too, right? They're not 250-pound, like Sanborn and Chanel are like big physical dudes. These guys, I was not to say they're not physical, but these guys are more faster, twitchier, right? And and I think one of the reasons, right, they're so good against the run, and we'll kind of get into like the strengths of the defense, which is a lot, really, right? And but the run defense is elite, right? So their fourth stuff rate, so runs of 0 yards or less, I think they lead the nation in tackles for loss. They're third in power success rate, so really good short yardage, third and fourth down. They don't let a lot of people convert, right? They're just physical at the point of the attack. Teams only average 2.7 yards per carry against them. It's a little misleading though, that number, because they have so many sacks and tackles for loss that it kind of adds up. You can get them a little bit, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but but pass defense wise, they're 15th in pass efficiency. But to me, when I watch them, it's not that the corners aren't good; they're good, and the safeties aren't good; they're good. But it really comes down to just the pressure that they get, and they're first in the country in sack rate. They have 54 sacks and 50. Anytime you put over 50 sacks on a season, you're doing something right. And I think the main thing is when you watch them is you don't see any particular guy pop as a pass rusher up front, but you see guys win different ways. And I think that's a little bit like Notre Dame, where I know Isaiah Foskey, leads the team in sacks, but I think it's more of a committee where you see like, Riley Mills had a day, and Jason Marola is really like, standing out today. And then you see Maya Tagovailoa most win, and across the board you see different guys win, and that's what makes Notre Dame's defensive line good. And I think that's what makes them and their linebackers, because they obviously bring the linebackers a ton, and with the pressure, but I think just a variety of pressures and what they do there just really, really stands out to me, and why they're so good and so hard to block in protection.
Yeah. I was thinking of the pass rush. So they have a freshman, number 30, Colin Oliver, who is their main guy off the edge. And he plays on the side that Josh Lugg would be. So he comes off there. The defense is left, the offense is right. And he's very small. Like he can't be more than 240, right? And he's very speed guy, but also like because of the speed, like he can play inside, he can kind of juke outside and come back inside. And Josh Lugg's obviously bigger, right? And isn't the greatest athlete. Like that's an interesting matchup just to kind of go forward, because if he can win just on his own, then that obviously creates a bunch of problems. And just getting into like the variety of pressures that you're talking about, like this, it exacerbates the loss of Kyron because he was such a good in pass protection, right? He's such a good blocker. And, obviously I think Chris Tyree's gotten better there. I think that Logan Diggs has shown, a good ability so far. But it's a different, this is a different
Kyron is certainly on a different level.
Kyron's on a different level, and the defense is on a different level too. So that's again, like another situation where, Oklahoma State might have an advantage in this game.
Yeah, and it's actually something that I was talking about with Mike Frank on Power Hour earlier when we first got into them. this isn't a game where I know everyone wants to see Blake Fisher play, and he might play. He might play a decent amount in this game. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. But when a guy hasn't played for months and probably isn't in the best shape, it's a lot easier to kind of get back if you're not an offensive lineman where you have to play every snap. They don't rotate in offensive linemen. So say when Myron came back from his foot injury, and then he had to play like 15 snaps against Clemson in 2018 or whatever. Like, that's fine, right?
Yeah.
But if Blake Fisher has to play 70 plays, that's a lot of plays for not just for a 330-pound guy, but a 330-pound guy who hasn't played in months or whatever, right? So, and then that's just on top of that. There's the whole Oklahoma State issue of they throw a bunch of different looks at you. They simulate pressure. They run a ton of zone pressures. The linebackers really all of them are good pass rushers. And so you're putting in that situation where, okay, now it's you got to sprint. You can't crawl, right? You got to sprint right away. So that's a really tough ask. So I don't know if that's going to be. I think if Blake Fisher has to play a lot in this game, I think expectations should be set low for him because I don't think that is something where they're going to end up being in a good spot because of that. I just think that's going to be really, really tough for him or for anyone that would be put in that position.
Right. And just like you want the chemistry, right? Like you want to be able to like who would he even come in for? That's the thing. Like Alt and Christophic have been playing next to each other the whole time. And then you had Madden and Luck, they haven't missed any snaps this year. So
everyone, the assumption would be that Josh Luck, because he's been banged up.
Yeah. I mean, it's a better matchup athletically for Fisher than Luck, but at the same time, like I said, Luck's been the guy the whole time. So it's just you'd want to know like he's very ready to go. And he's working well with Madden because even when he never worked with next to Madden, right? Madden came in, not even in the spring, because Madden came in post spring, and Blake was on the left side anyway. So it's just kind of he's on a different side, playing with someone he's never repped with or anything. I mean, obviously in bowl prep maybe, but
it's not something it's easy that someone can just walk in. That's the other thing. People just think you can play right, left side. It's not that easy. It's not that easy. Like some guys, it would be much easier for Joe Alt to do it. I'll tell you why, because he played tight end before. So he had to line up both sides. I mean, he's done it for basically years now. And then he also did it this year where he was playing a little bit of tight end before too. So excuse me. It's not like a simple thing as people expect. And people should have their expectations set in the right spot there. Because I just don't think it's realistic for him to come in and all of a sudden Blake Fisher's now he's going to take the offensive line to the next level. It's not going to be that easy. It's not going to be. And I am like a huge Blake Fisher fan. I think he's going to be all world, right? But I just don't think it's a good spot for him to get put into.
Right. And we had this conversation too regarding like Kyle Hamilton, where you can't just like even him, right? He can't just come in off of 6 weeks off and be the same guy, right? And that's part of the calculus where it's like, oh, maybe I won't play in this game because you can't just come in and play the 70 snaps at that level because you haven't played football. Blake Fisher's been out longer than that, right? And he's a bigger guy.
Yeah.
So
3 months.
Yeah. So it's just it's a big ask there.
Well, let's get a little bit into the scheme. We'll talk about Jim Knowles first. Was the defensive coordinator. He left for Ohio State. Probably former Duke defensive coordinator was there under David Cutcliffe. Done just a fantastic job at Oklahoma State. The thinking was he was going to stay on for the bowl game. That's not what they're going to do. He's going to leave. So they haven't decided who's going to call, but it's going to be the same scheme. It's going to
Yeah.
be the exact same scheme. I think the one thing it'll be hard to replicate for them. He's so unpredictable, and I think he's known as like a heavy blitz guy. But there's a lot of times where he's not bringing 5. A lot of times he's bringing 4, but you just don't know which 4, right? Which is they run a 4-2-5, and it's a true 4-2-5, right? Where they have 3 safeties.
The safety, yeah.
But they play a lot of 3 down, right? They mix fronts a lot. They do late shifts. They show a lot of different potential rushers on each snap. I mean, it's a lot to handle. It's a lot to handle. Whenever I think about that, I think about Notre Dame doesn't want to get into too many obvious passing situations, and they want to have success throwing on first down, because third down, where they're I think second in the country in third down conversion percentage, that's not going to be an area where Notre Dame wins a lot. So I mean, just what, based on kind of like what they run and everything they do, what do you think are like keys for Notre Dame to be able to kind of handle what they do in terms of pressure wise, and how they should attack them?
So you just made the point that I was going to make, that like I don't think they can be a run on first down kind of team, because you need to get you need to be on schedule against them. Because so I watched their games against Baylor, in the earlier game against when they had Baylor had their starting quarterback. Baylor was running on first down all the time, and you're just not going to get a lot on them running the ball. So you're frequently in 2nd and 8, and you're in 3rd and 8, right? And that's you don't have time on a 3rd and 8 situation to run longer routes so you can get a first down. It's just not going to be there.
Yeah, 3rd and 8 is death against them. Yeah.
And when you think about Jack Cohn in that kind of situation, like that's Baylor with a mobile quarterback, right? Oklahoma State, Caleb Williams, or Oklahoma with Caleb Williams. That's a mobile quarterback. Like Notre Dame doesn't have that. If the first or second read is not there for Jack Cohn, that's going to end up in a sack, because that's the way it's been against teams that aren't Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that I thought they're going to have to be aggressive on the early downs. I think Notre Dame needs to get Kevin Austin into the slot with Michael Mayer, because the safeties are uber aggressive. And so if you're running a lot of play action, which again, I mean, we always harp on play action all the time. Notre Dame they've run a lot more play action the last 6 weeks with Jack Cohn, which is good. They need to do that against this team. You need to get the safeties moving forward. And then you need to work Mayer and Austin in the middle of the field. And then I think the corners can, they don't give up a ton, but I think they can be gotten by smaller, faster guys. So like if you have Styles and Lindsey on the outside, like that's where you want to work them. I don't really love them in the middle of the field, just because you do want that size too against those safeties. So I think you can get them behind the defense, and then I think you get Mayer and Austin inside. I like bunch sets where you don't have to have Austin in the slot if you're in like a bunch set, like the way they opened the game against Georgia Tech, with that little crossing concept and the corner from Lindsey. That's a good design, I guess, that could work against Oklahoma State on an early down. I'm curious on your thoughts of how they're going to approach their running game, because it seems like Oklahoma State can be gotten with outside zone, and Notre Dame
can't run.
They're not very good outside zone team.
Not with this personnel.
Right. And so it's like and you don't have Kyron either. So it's like you want to run outside with Diggs and Tyree. You can't run outside with Notre Dame. So it's almost like it's like Notre Dame wants to run inside zone and duel and that sort of thing. And and Oklahoma State's really good at taking that away. I was curious to hear what you kind of thought about that.
I was thinking that, I mean, they're obviously still going to run inside in this game. I was thinking that Tommy Rees is going to have to mix in, um, well, first of all, run a lot of misdirection.
Yeah.
Run a lot of misdirection, but then also give the ball to Lindsey and Styles, and on those jet sweeps, reverses, and gonna have to pick those spots, and then hopefully they get like I mean, I don't imagine they're gonna break a long one there, but if they can get 8 yards, 15 yards on some of those, like that's what they want to get and mix that in, because they're gonna have a lot of, 0, 2 yard gains inside, but you got to still run the ball on these guys. And then I think later on, because, like I said about them being, a true 4-2-5, a true nickel defense, right? Personnel wise, I think Notre Dame is going to play heavy against them and then try to do that and try to just say, okay, well, like, we're going to match and wear you down eventually, right? So I think that's what I kind of see them is Notre Dame, and Notre Dame hasn't run good that heavy this year, but I think personnel wise, this is kind of what they have to do in this game, because Oklahoma State doesn't really match them in that sense, and they can't really match them. So I kind of think Notre Dame has to play heavier and try to run that way and try to grind it out a little bit. And then also they got to hit they got to run perimeter more than you think. And even though you think this is a fast defense, it is a fast defense, but you got to be able to hit them every once in a while with one of those misdirections, because you have to be able to, that even if it doesn't result in big plays, that's got to be able to suck in those safeties, and that's got to be able to open things up in play action and that kind of game. So that's the way I kind of see it.
How much Buckner do you think we're going to see?
You know what? I don't think there's going to be a ton of Buckner in this game, which is, I know people will be disappointed by that.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't see it against this defense. I kind of think they're kind of built to stop a lot of that stuff. I think if you see Buckner, it'll be like heavy RPO stuff.
Yeah.
And very little quarterback design run. And I think that, I would say probably 15 plays tops that you would see, but I would say closer to 10, maybe even less than that of Buckner, just because when I watch them too, they just attack the mesh. Like and that's not a spot, especially when you consider they've had a couple fumbles there. That's a tough spot for Buckner to play in. It's funny because I was thinking about all these Notre Dame fans want to see Tyler Buckner. They want to see Blake Fisher in this game. They want to see the young guys play. They're like, they got to get ready for Ohio State, right? Which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. You got to win this friggin' game. They're playing the Fiesta Bowl. They're not playing in the, Idaho Potato Bowl, right? Like, this is the Fiesta Bowl. I know that some guys opted out, but still, this is an important game. You're not playing for next year. Don't tell me Kurt Hinish isn't playing for next year. There is no next year, right? So, but I don't think young wise, I think Lorenzo Styles, I think could play a big part in this game, but I would be surprised if Tyler Buckner ended up playing a big part in this game, especially because if he was the guy and they wanted to put him in a situation where he had to drop back, I just think this would just be the worst game ever for him to do that. I think there'd be a lot of turnovers. Because I look at Caleb Williams and you look at him and I'm like, oh, there's a freshman who's played a lot more than Buckner this year, and he looked overwhelmed. And when I watched that film.
Yeah. So I was kind of thinking the same thing. Like, Oklahoma State is very good at taking away the thing that Buckner is really good at. So like Buckner is like RPO, not necessarily to throw, but to keep it and or flip it out for a screen. Well, Oklahoma State's really good at defending that stuff, and they want to come up and be physical, so they don't have a problem with that sort of thing. Like you just didn't see teams have a ton of success against them with that stuff. But what you do see is, so when you do RPO to throw, Notre Dame has one where they run the inside zone, and then you've got a slant behind it. And what Oklahoma State got caught with against Iowa State was they ran inside zone, ran a slant, the safety crashed, came flying up, the quarterback threw behind, it was a slant route, and it was just to the house, right? Because the cornerback got beat off the line of scrimmage, and then there was no one left. So those are the kind of things that you can hit Oklahoma State with, and that's more of something that Jack Cohn needs to be, you want him in there for, because he's been doing it all year and he's been doing really good, and that's the strength of his game. So it's one of those things where the dynamic play that we've seen from Buckner, or that everyone saw from Buckner early in the year, it's just kind of it's mitigated against Oklahoma State because of the way that they play defense.
Yeah, and because they know that this is what they're probably going to see. So right. I guess, you know what? I mean, maybe we're discounting it too much, and Tommy Rees has a lot more in there for Buckner to do in terms of like thinking of that Tyree touchdown in I can't remember if that was the Purdue game. No, was that Toledo?
Oh, it was Toledo.
The Toledo game, right? Where
the roll left.
Yeah. Like that. I'm thinking of that kind of thing. I wouldn't be surprised if we see one of those kind of plays from Buckner. I don't know if it'll be as successful against this defense, but yeah, I think that would be more of what you kind of see from Buckner in this game, is like they would have to kind of do it, because I mean, they're going to be geeked up to stop that. Definitely. So they play a ton of man coverage, right? They play, corners play 40% of the time in man coverage. Notre Dame's going to have to win 50-50, a good amount. That's just what you watch these games. Yeah. That's how you have to play against them, because you're not going to have anyone who's just straight burning them, or maybe Lindsey or Styles could burn them, but we've seen like Cohn isn't exactly leading them on those deep throws. So there's going to be a lot of 50-50 in this game. So I think, like you said, like Austin, like the big guys, Austin, Mayer, I think those are going to be, super important in this game. Just in terms of matchups, I mean, and there's not like a ton of obvious ones when you're playing a top 5 defense. There's not a ton of obvious ones. Was there anything you saw that you said, oh, this is where I thought Notre Dame, who they should go after, or this is who they should attack?
So that's why I was saying we get Austin and Mayer in the middle of the field, because I like them against the safeties. The safeties they're good all around players. I think they're best when they're attacking the line of scrimmage and coming up and making plays that way. You get them in coverage, that's not their best, their best quality, their best attribute. So that's what I want. Like I want my good Michael Mayer, or when I say I mean Notre Dame. I want Notre Dame's good against their weakest point of their defense. And I think that is the safeties in coverage. I also think if you can get Tyree in the middle of the field against the linebackers, right? It's just all kind of the same thing. Like get them out of their comfort zone of attacking the line of scrimmage, attacking the ball, and make them cover in space against Logan Diggs and Chris Tyree. And that's how you kind of exploit that situation. And again, the Oklahoma State corners, they're big and they're physical, like they're thick guys, right? None of them are real burners. And what you see against, we saw it against Baylor, we saw it against Oklahoma, is they can the guys get behind them. but it is forced to be a good throw. Like, so they're like there, but they're not turning guys loose, I guess is the
Yeah.
point. It's like they're getting run by because these guys they're playing against are
And
better
they're pretty
athletes.
grabby. They're pretty grabby.
Right. And so they're not getting run by that way, or like they're turning some guy loose and he's standing by himself. It's more of just like, hey, it's got to be a good throw. And again, that kind of goes into the weakness in Notre Dame. It's like we haven't seen Jack Cohn be pinpoint on over the top balls. And I feel like they're going to have to hit one in this game if they're going to, get over on this defense. And maybe, one or two, right? And that can change everything. You mentioned in the offensive preview how you thought Mike Gundy could kind of revert back to like the 07 and bring out some of that stuff. Do you think, because the whole theme of, when Reese came back, didn't go to LSU, was, the chains are off or whatever, he's going to be more free. Do you think that we might see a more open game plan, regardless of personnel, right? Like you get like you had the whole conversation with Matt about how you can be explosive with tight ends in the game. I was just wondering, like, do you think that Reese will be more open in this game, given that A, it's going to be hard to run against them anyway, and B, it's like a bowl game and you kind of want to go for it?
Oh yeah, I definitely think Reese is going to empty the bag, because I think he has to, right? I think he has to in this game because, and I wrote on Irish Sports Daily about how the key for Notre Dame is create explosives, because you're not going to be able to drive the field on these guys consistently convert on third downs. So explosives are going to be important. So you have to be able to find that. And so there has to be some plays like that Tyree Buckner play from the Toledo game. There has to be that kind of thing. And you have to have maybe some unconventional stuff, like, you're running the slot fade with Tyree like they did against Stanford, didn't hit it, but that's something that I was thinking, like, and so I'm thinking like more of like Tyree, you're going to get situations where, they're going to have man coverage on Tyree. Well, how about Tyree just running a seam out of the backfield, right? Like that kind of thing, right? Like, I'm sure he'll run a bunch of wheels in this game too, but just like that kind of thing, right? Where we haven't seen that from Notre Dame. Like, to me, like that, those are going to be just super important, because Reese is going to have these plays, and he's got to, and it's all about like timing and whatnot. And I mean, we don't know how, like, I mean, Tommy Reese could be, signaling down from the thing and saying, okay, we're going for the jugular, we're running this here. And Brian Kelly's like, no, right? We don't know that, he took the reins off him in certain situations. But I'm going to guessing, like, when he gets into spots, like, there's going to be a lot of second and short. They're taking a shot, they're doing something there, right? Rather than just like trying to just get, run duo and get a first down, right? So, that would be my guess with it, is that I think we're going to see more from Tommy Reese, and some of it is because, he's got the autonomy now, but it's more of the matchup, in my opinion. That's how I see it. Should mention, you talked about those safeties, just mention this, the PFF had Jason Taylor is a starting safety for them. He had a 137.5 pass rating man-to-man. Thomas Harper, who plays quite a bit for them, not a starter, plays about 20 snaps per game in man-to-man. He gives up 139.6 passer rating. So just something to think about when those guys, if they can attack them. And obviously, Jarek Bernard Converse, all Big 12 corner, very good player, very physical, but he's called 7 penalties this year. So, I mean, go at him and try to get calls, right? I think that's important. All right, well, how about just like a prediction? How many points do you think Notre Dame's going to put up in this game? How many points do you think they need to put up to win? Considering, I think, when we talked about the offense the other day, Oklahoma State's offense the other day against Notre Dame's defense, I don't see Oklahoma State scoring a ton of points. in this game. Like I would be shocked if they put up over 30. I don't see it,
Yeah.
and I don't see any way they're doing that. Um, how many do you think Notre Dame needs to win? How many do you think they're going to score in this game?
Needs to win. I think needs is probably 24. That's what I would say needs to win, right? I think 24, 21 would be something like that. I think they will score like I want to say 30. So basically 3 touchdowns, 3 field goals was because I think that I think Spencer Sanders will put them in position to like they don't have to work for
Yeah,
it
short
really.
fields. Yeah.
Yeah. They don't like Oklahoma State doesn't have a great field goal kicker. So that's part of it too. Yeah, so I think I honestly I was thinking a lot like the Camping World Bowl against Iowa State, where it's like they're moving the ball, but they can't, punch it in. They get a bunch of field goals and that sort of thing. Maybe they pop a big play. I think they scored 34 in that game. I could see, anywhere between like 27 and 30 is probably where I'd put Notre Dame's output. It's just a matter of like, and for Oklahoma State, like is Notre Dame going to turn the ball over? I guess is the big question, right? If Notre Dame starts turning the ball over and, they get short fields and they start playing on the front foot, then that's a little bit, that's when the game gets kind of sideways and you start playing in a way that you don't totally feel comfortable with. So yeah, turnovers is kind of the big key in this game. I don't think Oklahoma State needs to turn it over for Notre Dame to win. I think Notre Dame does need to turn it over for Oklahoma State to win, I guess.
I think I would agree with that. At the same time, I would think, to me, like 27 is like, I could easily see them scoring 27. I could also see them scoring like 20, but still winning the game, like 2017 or something. Like I could still see that. Oklahoma State only gave up 30 once this year, right? So, it's a tough team to score on. The way I kind of see it, and I was thinking of that Citrus Bowl with LSU, which was, obviously weather had a little bit to do with it, but it was kind of an ugly game. It was definitely a defensive battle. But if you go back and look at that game, Notre Dame, they were able to kind of manufacture points with, big plays here and there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they got it. And obviously the one huge play from Miles Boykin. So I kind of see it a little bit like that, but I also think that Notre Dame, like I just have a feeling they're going to get a defensive score in this game.
Yeah.
And because of that, I'd say like 27-20 or something like that is how I kind of see it for Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
I think and I would say it's more likely that Notre Dame ends up winning by double digits than it is that Oklahoma State winning the game. It's just in my mind. I just don't think their offense is good enough unless like Oklahoma State really needs those turnovers. I think.
Yeah,
I think so. I just don't think. I don't think they're going to have a ton of success against Notre Dame's defense, and that's just kind of the way that I think it's going to play out.
Yeah, and I think Oklahoma State has always been the more physical team. When you look at like Baylor's,
in the Big 12 for sure, no doubt.
So they have not played a physical team like Notre Dame. Like you were talking about before with like Notre Dame, if Notre Dame could go heavy, Oklahoma State's never had a team lean on them like that.
No, they don't have anybody who has like multiple tight ends. They don't.
Right.
That's not the conference they play in, right? So
they're small and fast and everything, and that's great, like from where they play and who they play against. But like Joe Alt's a big guy. These are big, strong guys. Like,
well, you brought up that Iowa State game, and that was something that was big in that game. Was Notre Dame was just bigger and more physical than Iowa State, and that's why they just like they were like running out of the I formation against them. Like, and not that I see, Tommy going to the I formation in this game, but I mean, I definitely think that, it's a different brand of football. It's a different brand of football. And I think Notre Dame is more set up to play any kind of any brand of football than they are for Oklahoma State. And I don't know if Oklahoma State can really play that. Like, I mean, I do think, like you said, I was like, this was one of the funnest defenses to watch that I've seen all year. I really, really like their scheme. I really like the players. I think it's going to be tough for Notre Dame to score. But I mean, ultimately, I think Notre Dame will score enough to win the game. All right, well, we'll wrap it up with that. But just want to say Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy holidays, whatever you're celebrating. I mean, these are Notre Dame fans. They're celebrating Christmas. Come on. Merry Christmas, everybody. And hope everyone has a safe holidays. I know, things are weird right now, like they have been before, but hopefully everyone is able to see family, enjoy everything. And thanks a lot for listening and watching Hit and Hustle. And we'll be back to you next week. We'll talk a little bit more Oklahoma State, talk some more recruiting. I know there's some exciting stuff going on with that too. And break down a little bit more into Notre Dame wise and kind of what they're going to do. And some guys that we kind of expect to have big games next week. So thanks a lot, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you then.